Hey everyone, it's vmcampos Comic Book Fan. Welcome to the weekly vmcampos Comic Book Club. For the audio-only version of the podcast, head on over to your favorite podcasting app, Spotify, Google Play, iTunes, etc. Search vmcampos and subscribe. Warning! I will be going through the various pages of the book, but I will not be revealing the whole plot. You're encouraged to buy the book yourself. Check out your local comic shop, buy these books that I review, support your favorite creators and companies and local shops. It's worth it. This week I'm reading Usagi Yojimbo #1, published by IDW in 2019. This is the series where I review a comic book new or old from my collection and rate it on the scale of 1 to 5 for the factors of the cover art, the interior art, the plot, and the enjoyability of the book. Let's check out this week's comic. So I picked up Usagi Yojimbo #1, published by IDW recently. I've always had a soft spot for this character, for this comic book, Usagi Yojimbo, who's been around since 1984, created by Stan Sakai way back in issue #2 of Albedo Anthropomorphics. And Usagi has had a comic book in a variety of publishers through all of these decades. He's been first at Thoughts and Images, Fantagraphics, Mirage, Dark Horse, and now IDW, starting with a new #1. But it's actually legacy number 239. So there have been 239 issues of Usagi Yojimbo over the decades. Here we start with a new #1. I actually had Stan Sakai sign my copy of Usagi Yojimbo #100 at San Diego Comic-Con a few years ago. Very nice guy, very cool guy. I'm glad that his comic is still around. Still one of the few independent comic creations that still exist. So the cover features a grimly determined Usagi Yojimbo himself. That's Japanese for rabbit bodyguard. He's in this, pardon my lack of knowledge, samurai outfit. I know that there's nuances about being a Ronin versus a samurai, Yojimbo, etc. But I think the cover looks very powerful. He's standing there with his various sword, katana, and there's another type of sword that a samurai usually wears. The cherry blossoms fall, giving the whole cover these wonderful pink tones. Now, is this blood that he's standing on, or just a stylized shadow? If it's blood, then this is a pretty badass cover. If not, it's still very enjoyable. I'm going to give this a 4 out of 5. I've seen the evolution of Usagi's art throughout the decades. I sort of like the earlier, more cuter, cartoonier style. This is still cute and cartoony compared to the superhero comics. But seeing the evolution of the art, I kind of like the older art a little bit better. It is more refined nowadays, but still very good. So I'll give the cover a 4 out of 5. Interior art. Okay, well, everything is done by Stan Sakai, writing, artist, letterer, except for colors, which is Tom Luth. And that's something interesting nowadays. Usagi Yojimbo has always been basically a black and white comic. It's dabbled in color throughout the years, but now it's, I guess, color from now on by Tom Luth, longtime collaborator of Stan Sakai and Sergio Aragonés. And I don't know how I feel about that. I loved the black and white style from back in the day. I loved the line work, and that you were able to create a sense of space and depth by just black and white lines in a variety of line widths and such. And color, I don't really think it's enhancing the book, unfortunately. I think what's really going to lower my grade for the interior art is the color. It's not necessary. Oh, actually, this gradation right here of orange and yellow reminds me of Usagi Yojimbo #1 cover. I wonder if that's a shout out there. But I don't think the color really helps the book. You really got to go back and look at the black and white issues. such as the recent Usagi Yojimbo The Hidden miniseries. It was 6 issues, I believe, 5 or 6 issues, all in black and white, very nice. And even before that, before the Dark Horse comics run ended, it was all in black and white, and I would just see like the variety of line work, like a scene like this. I don't know, I just don't quite like it as much. The color, I don't think there's enough shading to really differentiate some elements. Like this character here has his gray tones in front of these gray tones. I think if that that creature were shaded more, if it was darker, this element would stand out more. And if the background were of a different tone as well, darker or lighter, it would differentiate this tone. So they've got background, middle ground, foreground. They kind of don't stand out as much as they could. Something like this. This character is clearly closer to the camera. These elements, this background, these bushes are further away, but they're all sort of toned the same in lightness. So I think this is a 3 out of 5, and what's really decreasing it is the color. Without the color, I would give this a 5 out of 5. The previous Usagi Yojimbo art is just amazing. This sense of depth and volume to the characters that was created in simple black and white. So 3 out of 5. The plot. Well, this is interesting because, again, this is technically, if we note down here, number 239 in a series. You don't have to have really read 238 issues before getting to this. This is a number 1. But it would have been nice to have some sort of recap for those that haven't been reading things. And I was reading the recent, like I said, the Dark Horse books, but I don't remember this main character here, Sasuke. I don't remember reading his demon hunting exploits from previous issues. You almost get a sense that if you've never read Usagi Yojimbo before, he's the main character because he's the first thing you see. And he's fighting very heroically against this demonic horde in a very bloodless battle, I might add. But I guess if you're trying to be all ages, you're not going to really show squirting blood. Even though there is a lot of violence in the book, it's this bloodless violence. You will pay for killing my children. No more will you prey on people. So there's a lot of proper language that is fun. It does feel of the time. I believe this is taking place in Tokugawa era Japan. What is that? The early 1800s. And Usagi is a wandering samurai. He's a masterless samurai, which is a ronin. His master died early on in the run, and he is just wandering. So he doesn't really appear until much later on over here, several pages. That's 12 pages into the book. And then he's watching a bunrak play, which is basically puppets, and he's enjoying the entertainment, and it's kind of funny, his dry quips and such. So we get these two storylines of the demon hunter Sasuke coming into town. Usagi is at a play, just hanging out in town, and then the two meet. They've had dealings with each other before. Now, I won't reveal the full plot of the book. You should really check it out on your own. The series just came out. You're able to jump on board. There is a supernatural element to things. I did enjoy things overall. I'll give it a 4 out of 5. I like where the book is going. I like that this is part 1 of 3. Sakai has been doing sorts of a lot of short 1 to 5 part like mini series in his main series, and number 1 of the IDW run starts off the Bunrak storyline. So it's a great place to jump on and see where things are going. There's a lot of adventure, action, ancient Japanese culture that you can really get enmeshed in and really kind of immerse yourself more in this genre, the samurai genre. It feels like these classic samurai movies in a comic book. The enjoyability of the book, I enjoyed it a lot. I give it a 5 out of 5. Again, I have a soft spot for this character. Seeing it for over 30 years, me owning the early issues and just seeing the evolution of the character, a huge cast of characters, historical info that Sakai gives you as the book goes on, definitions of words in Japanese, and just a great sense of this culture is captured very well. So it's a very enjoyable book. I sort of feel that, the violence should have more stakes in terms of there's a lot of sword play, and demonic biting and such, but there's no blood. I understand that if they're trying to do this as an all ages book, actually, if we look at it, cover by Sakai, there's no marking about the age for this, so I would have liked it to be, you know, a little bit more TV-14 or whatever with actual blood. That's just me. It would have contrasted really well with the very cute, cartoony aesthetic of the characters plus this violence. I think that might have been interesting. But Sakai knows what he's doing. He's been doing this for over 30 years, 35 years. So very enjoyable, 5 out of 5. For the audio-only version of the podcast, remember to head on over to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, SoundCloud, wherever you get your favorite podcasts from. Search for vmcampos and subscribe. You can also help me out by going to the Patreon, patreon.com/vmcampos. For $1, you can support all of my endeavors. It really helps. Or simply follow on Patreon to keep up to date with all my videos, my podcast, everything that I do. If you go to the $2 range, I'll actually mail you a curated comic book from my collection. I think it's worth it. This week I read Usagi Yojimbo #1. This has been the weekly VM Campos Comic Book Club, and I'll see you next week.